Okay, so this happened a few days ago. I had to write about it or it'll never get off my mind. First, I'd like to say I'm 17 years old. I bought Sims 4 about a month ago because I played one of the Sims games when I was a young kid. My sister had the game, so whenever I could get a turn, I would hop on and mess around with their Sims family. When I saw the newest game was on sale, I decided to get it even though I haven't played many games since my younger years. Soon enough, I fell into the dark hole of being completely engrossed by it, and in 1 month I logged over 80 hours, so it's safe to say that I was fully addicted. Today, though, was quite a bit different. So I was on the third generation of my first family, with 2 parents, 3 kids, and one of their friends living in one house. The family based off my own, even in our own house. That day, I threw a social party so the father could get more friends, essentially opening up my house to strangers, mainly neighbors. The party was going well enough when I noticed an NPC that I hadn't seen before. He walked with his hands in the pockets of his dark jacket, and there was something strange outlined in his jean pockets. As he walked through the house, he never turned towards the camera. Whenever I would turn the camera towards him, he would turn with the house, while everyone was socializing, drinking, and playing games. Towards the end of the party, the mysterious NPC left the house and walked off down the road. Back still turned towards the camera. I eventually put him out of my mind and continued with the family as the day came to an end. As the children began to go to bed, the friend was out of the house and the mother was doing yoga on the second floor of the house. I clicked on the father, allowing me to see his moods and his actions. There was a strange icon where his actions were, that looked like a bleeding question mark, something that never came up before. He looked around the house, confused, and began to walk towards the window near the front door. As he peered out, he cupped his hands near his eyes and against the window to get a better look. It looked like he saw something, so I moved my camera to look myself. At the door was a dark figure peering through the window at the father. He wore a dark jacket, the same NPC from the party earlier. I clicked the father and tried to cancel the most recent action, which was open the door. For whatever reason, I was seriously nervous about what was happening. I was clicking furiously at this point, trying to get him to quit what he was doing, but it was too late. He opened the door and the dark figure stood there and greeted the father. What happened next I still see in my head with perfect clarity. The NPC reached out to shake the father's hand, and as they shook, his other hand reached back to his pocket and slid out a knife. He pulled the father towards himself and thus pulling him into the knife and wrenched the knife back out. The father almost comically danced around in that spot, holding his hand to where the knife slid in and bent over in pain. I would have laughed if I wasn't so confused. He slid down on the doorframe and sat there, crying out. Just then, the NPC got up the stairs and into the yoga room where the mother was. He grabbed her from behind with his arms around her head, yanking it back. She began kicking and tried to scream, but his arm was covering up one side of her mouth to the other. Her panicked clawing began to slow until her arms just went down to her sides and her legs gave out. He laid her down, almost gently, before wiping the blood off of the blade on her leg. At this point, I was just sitting back and watching in horror. I had no control over the new NPC, and the camera was automatically following him through the house. I kept telling myself that this had to be some creepy, disgusting, scripted event, but I wasn't even convincing myself. This just wasn't that kind of game. He began towards the kids' room, where the son and 2 daughters were still asleep. He silently opened that door and let himself in, shutting it behind him. He went to the boy, picked up one of the pillows from the floor, and gently pushed it onto his face. The boy barely struggled, uselessly pawing at the man's arm before he stopped moving. The girls on the other side of the large room were waking after hearing the commotion. As they slipped out of bed, the man moved to block the door. As the first girl approached him, he slapped her across the face with the back of his hand, driving her to the ground, while the second daughter began to scream. He moved towards the second daughter. While out of his jacket, he drew a length of rope. He tackled her to the ground and got on top of her, tying her hands behind her back. He then went back to the first girl, still dazed on the floor, put one hand on either side of her head, and jerked violently to the side. The sound of her neck cracking was the worst part for me. I can still hear it. It's been playing over and over in my head ever since this happened. He laid her aside and moved to the second girl, who managed to sit up and was crying and shaking violently. I saw his hands working at his belt, pulling it loose. When I shut off the computer, I was sickened, trembling, and crying all at the same time. I put the computer down and sat there in the darkness of my room that I share with my siblings. I didn't sleep that night, not truly. Though I may have dozed off for a few minutes here and there, all I dreamed of was the sound of the first girl's neck and what he would have done to the second girl had I not shut it off. I would have given more details as to what happened, but I really can't take long in writing this. My family is hosting a party in a few hours, so I should really go help set up. If anyone has any ideas as to what actually happened, let me know. I couldn't find anything like this when I searched in Google.